Regularly scheduled programming will not be seen tonight. Now a special presentation. Charlie Brown here. Join me and the gang for a tribute to our creator, Charles Schulz. CBS Next.
Charlie Brown, oh Charlie Brown. Nobody likes me.
I like them all. If I didn't like the characters, they would not exist.
I'll give you 5 good reasons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are good reasons.
Because everything that I am goes into the strip.
Kick them Maybe you have pantophobia. Do you think you have pantophobia? What's pantophobia? The fear of everything. That's it! Good grief. Good grief. Good grief. Good grief. Good grief.
Good grief indeed. Good evening. I'm Walter Cronkite. This Sunday, more than 300 million of us Peanuts fans in more than 70 countries will say goodbye to Charlie Brown, Lucy, Snoopy, Linus, Schroeder, and the gang. After half a century, Peanuts creator Charles M. Schulz is putting away his drawing pen. For those 50 years, Schulz has filled the panels of his cartoon strip with more humor, humanity, and in the case of Charlie Brown, more humiliation than anyone who ever drew a bubble over a character's head. Tonight we pay tribute to the Peanuts gang, a gang that never really grew up, and certainly never grew old. But then, with all their anxieties and obsessions and troubled love lives, they were hardly kids in the first place. Just different facets of the personality of a barber's son from St. Paul, Minnesota.
If you were to read the strip, for just a few months, that would be enough. You would know me. I'm all of the characters because everything that I am goes into the strip.
What are you doing, Charlie Brown? I'm waiting for Valentine's. Oh well, good luck. Thank you. You'll need it.
Unlike all comic strips that came before, Peanuts illustrated the whole range of human feeling. The good.
I'm glad you came back, Sally.
The sad.
We lost the game because of Charlie Brown!
And the ugly.
You and your stupid old Beethoven! By golly, I'll show you! There! What do you think of that?
And it all began with hopeful, hapless Charlie Brown.
I was such a nothing kid. I used to think that my face and my appearance was so bland and so dull. But that's why Charlie Brown's face is a round blank face, because that's what I was drawing. Charlie Brown thought of himself, too, as just being a nothing face.
Charlie Brown, you'll have to model for us. Me? You want me to model? Sure, Charlie Brown, you'll be the perfect model. Turn him around. If we shape the eyes like this, and the nose like this, and the mouth like this. Yes, that's the way. Thank you, Charlie Brown. You were a perfect model.
It's as though Schulz took everything he learned about life's disappointments and gave it to a little round-faced boy.
I got 5 pieces of candy. I got a chocolate bar. I got a quarter. I got a rock.
In school, the precocious Charles Schulz, nicknamed Sparky, skipped 2 grades. Suddenly, he was the youngest, smallest, and shyest kid in his class. His social life and grades suffered and never quite bounced back.
I failed everything. I always went to class, but I never knew what was going on.
He was sustained mainly by his love of drawing. When he was a senior in high school, the yearbook editors accepted some sketches. But when he opened the yearbook, they weren't there.
When my high school had its 25th reunion, I was on the list of people they didn't know what had happened to.
During World War II, Schulz continued to battle his insecurities, and occasionally the Germans, and he kept drawing.
And then working my way up, little by little, corporal, sergeant, finally getting to be a staff sergeant, leader of a light machine gun squad. I was proud of that. I did it. And so I came back with a good feeling about myself, which lasted about 20 minutes.
But Schulz's talent for drawing children was beginning to get attention.
The humor that I had of these little kids saying these strange things worked. But I didn't start off with any ambition to draw little kids and dogs and things like that, especially birds. It took me 20 years to learn how to draw woodstock.
Too shy for college, Schulz enrolled in art correspondence school. A few years later, he'd go to work there and make the acquaintance of a fellow instructor named Charlie Brown. He borrowed the name, added his own personality, and the rest is cartoon history.
I'll hold the ball, and you come running and kick it. Oh, brother. I don't mind your dishonesty half as much as I mind your opinion of me. You must think I'm stupid.
Of course, Charlie Brown is really a decent person. But why does he keep believing that Lucy's not going to pull away the football? Is that stupidity?
Please. You just want me to come running up to kick that ball so you can pull it away and see me land flat on my back and kill myself. This time you can trust me. See? Here's a signed document testifying that I promise not to pull it away. It is signed. It's a signed document. I guess if you have a signed document in your possession, you can't go wrong. This year I'm really gonna kick that football. Peculiar thing about this document, it was never notarized.
People say, well, why couldn't you have Charlie Brown kick the football? Well, I could. It would make him happy. And happiness is neat. I wish we could all be happy, but unfortunately, happiness is not very funny. Oddly enough, I think cartoonists do get some of the best ideas when they are feeling at their most low, because then they can take these feelings and put them on the character who has to suffer. So I always say that if I'm suffering, then Charlie Brown has to suffer.
It's a story I've been reading called The Pit and the Pendulum by Poe. It's about this Mancy who is a prisoner. Well, he's tied to a table, and this big pendulum keeps swinging back and forth above him, getting nearer and nearer.
It sounds like an exciting story. I'll have to read it.
I think you'd enjoy it. I really do.
That Edgar Allan Poe was a riot.
Over the years, Schulz has put a little of himself in every character, but all of himself into their world. Just ask his wife, Jeannie.
My theory is that he's living in that world almost all the time.
I think about it all the time.
When we're driving in the car, I don't ask him what he's thinking about anymore, because I know what he's thinking about.
And I can almost guarantee you that no matter what I do, whether it's playing golf or going to a concert, no matter what I am doing, I will come up with one or two ideas.
Aren't the clouds beautiful? They look like big balls of cotton. I could just lie here all day and watch them drift by. If you use your imagination, you could see lots of things in the cloud formations. What do you think you see, Linus?
Well, those clouds up there look to me like the map of the British Honduras on the Caribbean. That cloud up there looks a little like the profile of Thomas Eakins, the famous painter and sculptor. And that group of clouds over there gives me the impression of the stoning of Stephen. I can see the Apostle Paul standing there to one side.
Uh-huh, that's very good. What do you see in the clouds, Charlie Brown?
Well, I was going to say I saw a ducky and a horsey, but I changed my mind.
To be able to do what I have done with the abilities that I have, it's a real blessing.
I remember a problem that I gave the class to draw small objects in groups of threes. Charles filled a whole sheet of 12 by 18 of drawings so crowded. And they were spectacular because there were things that you wouldn't even think of. That means that his mind is working every minute.
The world of Peanuts is full of love that's almost never returned. Marcy and Peppermint Patty are secretly in love with Charlie Brown, who's secretly in love with the little red-haired girl. Sally loves Linus, who loves his teacher and his blanket. And Snoopy, well, he's hopelessly in love with himself. Even that domineering fuss-budget Lucy has spent the past 47 years locked in a losing battle for Schroeder's love. Of course, he only has eyes and ears for Beethoven.
Sometimes I think you don't realize that you could lose me. Are you sure you want to suffer the tortures of a memory of a lost love? Do you know the tortures of the memory of a lost love? It's awful! It will haunt you night and day. You'll wake up at night screaming. You can't eat. You can't sleep. You'll want to smash things. You'll hate yourself and the world and everybody in it. Oh! Are you sure you want to risk losing me?
Then there's Sally's unresolved relationship with Linus.
I hear a helicopter. They're coming! They're coming! They rescued my sweet bamboo! Is it too late to turn around? Good grief, we're going down! Easy, easy! Wait! Don't drop me there! Don't! My sweet bamboo. Stupid pilot!
Even good old Charlie Brown has admirers. Sort of.
The light in Chuck's room just went out, Marcy. I bet he's gone to sleep, sir. Sleep well, Chuck. Hope you feel better in the morning. We miss you, Chuck. We love you, Chuck. We do? We do, Chuck. Poor Chuck. I hate to think of him lying up there in that hospital room. You like Chuck, don't you, sir? Well, I feel sort of I love Chuck. I think he's real neat. Real neat? You think he's real neat? I sure do. Someday I hope he'll ask me to the prom. In fact, I'd even marry Chuck. Come with me, Marcy. Is this the emergency entrance, ma'am? We're friends of Charles Brown. I have another patient for you.
There's a dominant theme of unrequited love. I think Snoopy is in love with himself, and it's still unrequited.
But nobody pines for anybody like Charlie Brown pines for the little red-haired girl.
There she is. There's that little red-haired girl. She's walking home from school. Just think, she's walking on the same sidewalk that I'm walking on. I wish I were walking with her. I've made up my mind. I'm going to introduce myself to that little red-haired girl. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to walk right over to her and I'm going to introduce myself. I'm standing up. Now I'm going to walk over there. I'm standing up. I'm sitting down.
As with so much else, when Charles Schulz drew Charlie Brown longing for the red-haired girl, he was using the ink of his own life. Remember the art correspondence school where Schulz met a fellow named Charlie Brown? Well, the cute little red-haired girl worked there too.
The little red-haired girl was named Donna. They were having trouble with their girls' softball team this one summer. For some reason, they asked me if I would be the coach, and she was on the team, and she played second base.
I was the worst one on the team, but I just wanted to be where he was, I guess.
I just thought she was wonderful.
Just as wonderful, about this time, Schultz's local strip, Little Folks, was picked up by a major syndicate and renamed Peanuts.
I finally went to New York and signed the syndicate contract and came back with the high hopes that she would marry me, but she didn't.
He had too many failures as far as I was concerned, and he had tried so long to sell his cartoons.
I was totally crushed. I dreamed about it for years, but I've made use of it all, of course.
Well, another Valentine's Day has come and gone. I'd give anything if that little red-haired girl had sent me a Valentine. Hey, maybe she did send me one. Maybe she did send me a Valentine, and it didn't get here till today. Maybe it's in our mailbox right now. I'm afraid to look. If I look and there's nothing there, I'll be crushed. On the other hand, if she did send me a Valentine, I've got to look.
Thank you, Sparky, for 50 years of being so wonderful and brilliant and sharing your heart and soul with all of us. Enjoy life without a deadline for a while. You deserve it.
Hear the sound, hit the show with the grand and glorious Booty. Watch the sun, catch the spray. There's a
One of the really practical ways of getting an idea when you have nothing really to draw is just taking a blank piece of paper and maybe drawing one of the characters in a familiar pose like Snoopy sleeping on top of the doghouse. Most cartoonists draw very fast because they don't like to work long hours. And then trying to imagine what would happen if, say, it began to snow. So you doodle in a few snowflakes, something like that. Perhaps you would be led to wonder what would happen if it snowed very hard and the snow covered him up completely like this, which would make a drawing or a shape, something like that. And maybe you think, what would happen if Woodstock were asleep in his little nest like this, and it started to snow, and perhaps he got covered up. So we would start with Snoopy having fallen asleep and having been covered with snow. So I would rough in that scene like that, and then leave the little balloon where he is thinking to himself, "Don't tell me, let me guess, it snowed last night." And then we show him running along here, because he's still worried about what happened to Woodstock during the last night's snow. Then I sometimes add a few little touches here, like maybe some extra little branches in the background. This is all done, of course, with a special drawing pen. And so then you would come to the finished product, which would look like this. I think it is just a good, solid cartoon idea.
Peanuts was a comic strip that became a hit, that became a cultural institution, that became an industry. Its characters have graced everything from lunch boxes to lunar landing modules, from beach towels to blimps. Perhaps no one more so than Snoopy, the beloved beagle with the overactive fantasy life.
Hey, Snoopy, why don't you come into the house? And I'll feed you in here. It's a lot warmer. Why does he have to make such a big deal out of everything?
Snoopy would be a hard dog to have. Charlie Brown has said many times, why can't I have a normal dog like everybody else?
On a day like this, a person really needs his faithful dog to come running out to greet him.
I'm sure he must puzzle sometimes. What is he doing out there in the doghouse? Why does he hang around with those funny little birds all the time? And how do they know what they're saying? And he likes to think that he's independent. He does a lot of things to show this independence.
Snoopy isn't home yet. I wonder where that dog is.
Hear the circle, hit the shore, with the grand and glorious booty.
But like he said one time, never get too far from the supper dish.
Supper time, yes, it's supper time. Oh, it's supper time, very best time of day.
He has to admit deep down, I suppose, that he really is totally dependent upon this round-headed kid who feeds him.
No, not tonight. Oh, all right. But it's so ridiculous. Other dogs go to bed without having a piggyback ride.
Snoopy, whose inspiration was Schulz's much-loved childhood pet Spike, started out like other dogs.
It was almost 10 years before Snoopy began to think the thoughts that he now does and to get up on his hind legs, and I think that changed the whole strip.
It did more than change Peanuts. It changed all comics.
After Snoopy started walking upright, you see just a huge progression of comic strips where there's some kind of an animal and it's walking upright and talking and thinking and acting like a person. And that all came from Snoopy.
Roy, there's something about that kid out there. You almost get the idea that he thinks he's a soldier on leave in Paris.
That was only one in the long line of Snoopy's alter egos. There was the ever hip but never slick Joe Cool. The tennis pro with the fast serve and the slow volley. The referee who plays by his own set of rules.
I think people love Snoopy's confidence. He can imagine being a character and then he can be the character, and he's always the character brilliantly, you know, he does it in his own way.
Never more brilliantly, of course, than when he's the daring World War I flying ace, hot on the trail of the legendary Red Baron.
I've always pictured Snoopy with the old aviation World War I hat on him and the goggles and a silver scarf, and I think we sort of fashioned ourselves that way in those days.
We have ignition sequence start.
Astronaut Gene Cernan and the crew of Apollo 10 did more than take inspiration from Snoopy.
Launch commit, liftoff. We have liftoff, 49 minutes.
For their moon mission, they named their spacecrafts after Charlie Brown and his dog.
Oh, Houston, this is Snoopy.
Charlie Brown and Snoopy are special to me. They took me to the moon, and they gave me one heck of a ride along the way.
That little Snoopy was a real winner.
Long before he conquered outer space, Snoopy already had won the hearts of millions on Earth, and he keeps on winning them. Without saying a word, Snoopy speaks a language everyone understands.
The great thing about Snoopy is that Snoopy's a dog who acts the way we think our dogs are thinking.
I wish you wouldn't do that. It's very embarrassing.
Snoopy can do anything. Undoubtedly, that's the best thing that I ever thought of. Popeye will always be with us. Mickey Mouse will always be with us. And I kind of hope that Snoopy will too.
Snoopy, you'll have to be all the animals in our play. Can you be a sheep? How about a cow? How about a penguin? Yes, he's even a good penguin. No. Listen, all of you. You've got to take direction. You've got to have discipline. You've got to have respect for your director. I ought to slug you. Ugh! I've been kissed by a dog. I have dog germs. Get hot water. Get some disinfectant. Get some iodine.
When I heard Sparky was retiring, I sat down and cried. Peanuts has always been my security blanket. As far as being a cartoonist, it was always nice seeing it there every day, knowing it was, it'd been there for 50 years, and I'd hoped it'd be there for another 50.
Why do you fly upside down? It's amazing that the way you get around.
You do think I'm beautiful, don't you, Charlie Brown? You didn't answer me right away. You had to think about it first, didn't you? If you really had thought I was beautiful, you would have spoken right up. I know when I've been insulted. I know when I've been insulted. 女に恥をかかせて、あんたなんか最低。Je suis quand on m'insulte et je suis qu'on m'a bel et bien insulté. He sido insultada. Insultada. Ich weiß, wann man mich beleidigt. Ich weiß, wann man mich beleidigt.
Okay.
Yare. Oh, misère. Good grief.
We'll be right back with Good Grief, Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown really didn't need anybody to remind him that he was a nobody. But for 50 years, he had somebody anyway. Her name was Lucy Van Pelt. And when she first appeared in 1952, she was a cute little baby with big round eyes. But not for long.
Okay, it's my turn now. Schroeder, put those rose bushes at third base. Linus, put those geraniums at first and second. Sally, plant those daisies at home plate. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Hello, stupid. Not
again. Writing a letter to a stupid pumpkin? You make me the laughing stock of the neighborhood. All they talk about is my little brother, who always writes to the great pumpkin. You better cut it out right now or I'll pound you.
I think Lucy was the maybe the first ever the female character who was kind of a crab. And you see that now everywhere on TV and in the movies, and it became kind of a popular form. But Lucy was the first, and to me, she's still the best.
That's ridiculous.
I love Lucy because I love her rage. I love her. If I could scream in person, you know, I feel like I would scream like Lucy.
Okay, switch channels. Are you kidding? What makes you think you can come right in here and take over? These 5 fingers. Individually, they are nothing. But when I curl them together into a single unit, they become a fighting force, terrible to behold. Which channel do you want?
One of my favorite cartoons by Charles Schulz as a kid is, the punchline is Lucy turning to Charlie Brown and saying, I'm torn between the desire to create and the desire to destroy. And as a little kid, that was mind-boggling to me because I went, yes, yes, I have these raging feelings inside me too. She's my favorite.
What do you want? I am a patient. I need advice. I have a serious problem. There's this little red-haired girl in my class. You see, and...
Ha! I know your kind, Charlie Brown. It's men like you that make the world a rough place to live for beautiful girls like me. You men are all alike. You talk a lot of romantic nonsense. But do you ever discuss marriage? No!
All the time I was growing up, every comic strip that I ever read showed some little kid having a lemonade stand. And I was thinking about Lucy having a lemonade stand, but then I thought, no, what would Lucy have? She'd have a psychiatric booth, and that's how it began.
So I feel these tensions and all these pressures. So what should I do?
Learn to relax. 5 cents, please.
What? 5 cents for just that?
Is the doctor in?
No, I think she's way out.
May I help you?
Charles Schulz did more than introduce psychiatry to the comics page. He popularized a new vocabulary.
Why, you blockhead? This is just the beginning.
One of the great things about Peanuts is the language and calling Lucy crabby.
Look out, everybody. I'm gonna be crabby for the rest of the day.
And a fuss budget.
Fuss budget. Fussbudget. Fuss budget.
Hey, how'd he know that word?
We all know fuss budget. Some of us work with them. And I think there's a Lucy in every office, don't you think? Or 2 or 3.
Disgraceful. I can't stand it. That's what I think of you and your stupid blanket.
Not even her little brother Linus is safe from Lucy's wrath. Maybe that's why Charles Schulz gave him a security blanket. An indestructible one.
And get rid of that stupid blanket. What's a Christmas shepherd gonna look like holding a stupid blanket like that?
Well, this is one Christmas shepherd who's going to keep his trusty blanket with him.
See?
You wouldn't hit an innocent shepherd, would you?
I believe that Linus and his security blanket is the best. I think this has had more impact than anything that has been in Peanuts.
Aren't you afraid of what the kids at school might say about that blanket?
Do you have a nickel?
Flip it into the air. They don't say very much.
I mean, it's something I think everybody can relate to. And if we don't have an actual literal security blanket, we're all carrying around an invisible one. I think for that alone, Charles Schulz deserves the Nobel Prize.
I'm completely fed up. I've never felt so low in my whole life.
When you're in a mood like this, you should try to think of things you have to be thankful for. In other words, count your blessings.
Ha! That's a good one.
And while Linus is known for his blanket, he's the one who usually provides the security.
I don't get half the breaks that other people do. Nothing ever goes right for me. And you talk about counting blessings. You talk about being thankful. What do I have to be thankful for?
Well, for one thing, you have a little brother who loves you. Every now and then I say the right thing.
To Charles Schulz, thank you for a lifetime of enjoyment. You're not maybe a direct inspiration for Bart Simpson, but an indirect inspiration, and for that, I thank you, and I apologize.
When the last original Peanuts rolls off the printing presses and into our hearts this Sunday, it will be Charles Schulz's 18,000th comic strip. And every one of them has made a lot of people happy.
Happiness is finding a pencil, knowing a secret, telling the time. Happiness is learning to whistle, tying your shoe for the very first time. Happiness is playing the drum in your own school band. And happiness is walking hand in hand. Happiness is having a sister, sharing a sandwich, getting along. Happiness is morning and evening, daytime and nighttime too. For happiness is anyone and anything at all that's loved by you. You're a good man, Charlie Brown.
To those who've said that Peanuts didn't change with the times, well, maybe that was Schulz's point. The times don't change as much as we think they do. As a matter of fact, we aren't really saying goodbye to Charlie and his gang. Charles Schulz has invested them with immortality. In newspaper reprints, scores of books, and television shows, Peanuts will be a reminder for generations to come of the universal truths of human nature, that love is never perfect, that hope springs eternal, and that you should never, ever let Lucy hold the football. Thank you, Charlie Brown, Linus, Snoopy, and everybody else for showing us who we are. You're a great man, Charles Schulz. I'm Walter Cronkite. Good night.
I sure pulled a Charlie Gordon.
Charlie wasn't the smartest kid on the block.
I just want to be a genius.
Until a medical miracle.
We just have to make parts of your brain to work a little better.
Changed his life forever.
You're a hell of a lot smarter than we thought you were.
Yeah, maybe a little.
Now he'll experience life and love like never before.
No!
Matthew Modine and Kelly Williams.
I know how it feels to be happy.
Flowers for Algernon, CBS, February 20th.